And welcome back to The Price of Business. Bill Knapik sitting in for Kevin Price. Very excited today. Right now, we have the Chris segment. I'm going to call it right up front. We have Chris Kidd. He is the president of Chris Kidd Enterprises. And we have Chris Snachez. He is the director with PricewaterhouseCoopers Sports Intelligence Practice. First, Chris Kidd. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So glad that you're here today. Tell people, Chris, about your company and what you do briefly, and then we'll get to Mr. Chris Snachez.
I'm a financial coach, and I work with people from pretty much all walks of life on just getting their finances together on a personal level, getting out of debt, handling it better, learning to build wealth, and then also on the investment side, learning how to manage their money, make it work harder for them. And I also work with entrepreneurs trying to start up a business or try to come up with some sort of an idea. I think that everybody needs some sort of a business, even if they're happy with their day job, if for no other reason, at least for tax purposes. So there's the three areas that I really deal with.
And that's a lot. And that's all on Monday, right?
Yeah, that's just on Monday.
In the meantime, you've brought a guest. Let's tell people about your guest.
Yeah, my guest, like you said, is Chris Snachez with PricewaterhouseCoopers, the director of their sports intelligence practice. And we'll let Chris tell us a little bit more about that and how you got over to PricewaterhouseCoopers. Tell a little bit of your backstory, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chris. Nice to meet you. Just a little bit of history of myself. I came over from the Secret Service. I spent 14 years with the Secret Service as a special agent. Spent 5 of those years on the President's Detail up in D.C. Happened to get quasi-recruited over to PricewaterhouseCoopers to do physical threat and vulnerability assessments in the oil and gas industry. Kind of my tour took a left-hand turn when I met my current boss, Glenn Ware, up in D.C. in the corporate intelligence practice. He runs the corporate intelligence practice for Pricewaterhouse. And kind of learning about that practice, you know, there was an understanding of what they do with companies, and the basic premise is they want to take a deep dive look into certain companies that their clients may acquire or do business with, whether domestically or internationally. And they took a deep dive intelligence look at the CEOs, the C-suite, trends of the company, what's taking place, so that company A can reduce the risk in doing business with company B. So, and learning about that and understanding the process of the corporate intelligence practice, I had the idea of, you know what, let's try to take this and see if we can build it in the sports practice. We didn't have anything in the sports practice. I knew that certain organizations, certain leagues did some sort of due diligence work. I knew the extent of it wasn't that, I guess, big, if you will, or wasn't that deep. So we started with Glenn. We built a program up. We took it to an NBA team, and we sold our product literally in 15 minutes with what we do and how we do the due diligence work to help mitigate risks for the team and the organization.
Speaking of mitigating risks, we just had the draft just a little over a week ago, and there's always issues that come up with the draft deal, and obviously there was a deal with Johnny Manziel, how that has kind of turned out and taken a weird turn. And what was that? Laramie Tunsil. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That whole deal happened, what was it, like 15 minutes before the draft. He was supposed to go like one of the top picks, and then he dropped down quite a bit. How do y'all help teams, or do you work with the teams? Do you work with the league, agents? Who all can you work with, and how do y'all do your background checks?
All of the above. So how we actually got started with the teams, and we've been working with the teams directly. One of the big things that they're looking at is, and I'll just specifically talk about the NFL. The NFL actually does some sort of diligence work for the teams that are out there. It's very basic diligence work. What we provide is a deeper dive into the individual, and we do it based on 5 different criteria. We have criminal history we look at. We look at social media snapshots. We look at social media fan sentiment. What are the public saying about this individual, especially if they're coming from college to the pro teams? Do the fans in this college like this individual? Are they saying anything negative? So it's a big character identifier for the organizations. We look at third-party negative influences. Who is going to be influence this individual, either from a positive standpoint or negative standpoint? It could be either one. And then we actually put authored text in the report. If this person has social media, if he's registered within, Twitter, Facebook, whatnot, what has he said? What has he put out there? And we actually put authored text within the report, but again, positive and negative. So by doing this, we give a more detailed look and a more detailed identifier to the teams of this individual. And ultimately, when we get this information, it's up to the organization to determine what they want to do and how they want to move forward with this information.
It's very interesting how much of the social media is now part of checking out someone in this capacity. That's fascinating. What are the social media outlets? Certainly Facebook, but how do you do that?
Actually, we use open source and syndicated source databases that we look at social media, as well as some of the criminal history and other information that we try to identify. What this person's character is, behavioral status is. With social media, we look at all the big ones: Facebook, the Vines, the Snapchats, Twitter. There are some characteristics that we cannot pull forth. Again, if you look at Snapchat, the things that kind of disappear within the next day or quickly, unless we're monitoring real time, we can't pick up the information with that.
Can you shortcut it and call in any favors from your
right? That'd be nice if we could. I tell you what.
Well, how long does this take, Chris? These 5 points that you pursue and check out. How long does the check take?
Yeah, no,
Roughly,
absolutely. It's a great question. We actually have 3 different levels, and something I didn't touch on. We actually have what we call a social media snapshot that we look at. What we call level 1. Level 2 is what we look at just the individual, and then level 3 is the actual deep dive where we look at family members, friends, acquaintances, everything under the sun. So when we're looking at a level 1, we can turn something around within a day.
I like that term, deep dive. Boy, that's when we're really getting deep undercover, right?
Now, I imagine sponsors would be very interested in y'all's information as well, and I imagine that you probably deal with some companies that may be looking at endorsing athletes and stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've actually approached some major companies that have sponsored athletes, and that's a big hot topic. Companies that we've dealt with, or at least talked to, have felt comfortable with their diligence process. But again, when you're talking about the James Harden of the world that signed a $100 million contract with Adidas, how far that diligence process they go forth, and what's their criteria, what's their risk, to where if something does happen, they pull the plug on that contract.
Absolutely fascinating. Chris, tell people how they can learn more. Give them the website, please.
Yeah, sure. We're actually, if you just go to the PwC website and just type in PwC Sports Intelligence in the search engine, we're right there.
And I'll tell you, hearing your background at the very beginning of the segment, boy, it sounds like you ought to write a book. You have there's so much more to talk about. We hate to see you go. That sounds like great information for a book. Is that in the works?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Not yet, huh?
Well, very nice. And Mr. Chris Kidd, tell people how they can reach you.
Real easy. Just go to chriskidd.com. That's CHRISKIDD.com.
Very nice, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being on The Price of Business. In the meantime, we're going to take a short break and come right back with even more. Stay tuned.